We will be, please, gentlemen and ladies, let us put down our questions. We are coming back to our presenters with questions on what they have presented to us. Please just prepare your question and get them ready. I would like to call on Joanne Preston. Joanne will be leading us in preparing and structuring manuscripts and the blind peer review process. Dr. Justin has informed this presentation of how long it took Joanne and her office to review his article. That whooping 12 months, that's a whole some year just to review an article. And just like he said, so many publishers are not interested in peer review. So many authors in quotes are also not interested in peer review. But in this conversation this afternoon, we should be able to connect to the need of peer review process in our publication process. So Dr. Joanne, the floor is for you. We will be listening to you as you drive us through this topic. Dr. Joanne.
Thank you. Everybody hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
What I'm going to do, because Dr. Pindai and Dr. Justin did a really great job of giving you overview, I am going to make my slides available to you. I am not going to talk to my slides. I'm just going to tell you a few stories because we are really getting short on time. And I think that there's some things that I'd like to highlight, but the slides pretty much tell you what I really wanted to say about preparing a manuscript and peer review. But first question is, a lot of people think that they ought to write a book rather than an article. And books are terrific, but they are not read by that many people. Unless you get on the New York Times bestseller list, which very few of us get on, you have about 100 people who read your book, even if you publish it yourself. So I find that articles get my ideas out faster and to more people. Thousands of people read articles. They read it in libraries. They read it because they get the journal. They are sometimes republished in other journals. And it is also, books are not reviewed by peers, and articles are, and it makes your ideas sharper. So if you want to build your reputation, then thinking about articles is far more helpful than books. Books are great, and once you get an idea that you want to sell, then a book makes sense. Okay, you have to have an idea. And as far as I'm concerned, you get ideas all the time. You get ideas in the shower, you get ideas taking a walk. So have a place that you can put the ideas. Now, I'm somewhat old-fashioned. I do use notes on my phone, but normally I just keep a little notebook and I write an idea down, and that's really important. The other thing I want to make here is that the more you present an idea to people, whether it's an informal gathering or whether it's a formal presentation at a conference, the clearer your idea gets and the easier it is to write it. The other thing I want to mention is that when I do a first draft, I actually record a presentation because most people speak better than they do when they sit down in front of a computer screen and write. So recording a presentation is really a great way to get your first draft. Now your choices, you can do lots of things. The journal that I'm editor for, we take all of these. We take theoretical, academic, experimental, case, action research, practice, and opinion pieces. But some journals only take one of them. So you have to know your journal, as Dr. Pindai said. There's lots of different kinds of journals, and I am going to be an advocate of the peer-reviewed journal. And that is what Dr. Justin really emphasized. And I think Dr. Pindai is saying the same thing. You have to be careful about online journals. I had one student take their dissertation and actually put it on an online journal, and it was really not a good journal. I looked up the editorial board, and the editorial board was made up. The names were not real. They had Harvard University, Yale University, and if you look at the faculty of the management department of those universities, those people weren't there. So you really need to be careful about what journal you are thinking about. How do you choose a journal? Well, what do you want to sell? You're selling yourself, your reputation, your knowledge. Do you want an audience that is a bunch of managers? Well, then you want to publish in journals that managers read. Are you an academic? Do you want to sell your ideas to other academics? Well, then you want to look at journals that academics read. So know your audience and who you want to reach. Be sure your journal is a real journal and that the editor actually does publish. Because if they don't, then it's not a good journal. And Cabell's has a series of reviews of every journal in the world, no matter what the topic. And so you look in that particular research group of books and look at the journal. You will get the editor of the journal, you'll get the review board, you'll get the circulation, you will get everything about that journal. Okay, Dr. Pindai talked about rewriting, and you've got to do that. Now, if you're writing in English, use English words more than jargon. Here's the thing. I have been an editor for the ODJ for over 21 years. That's scary. But I don't know every topic in organization development and change. I don't know every jargon word that is in the field, and neither does anybody who reads my journal. So if you're going to use a jargon word, then define it, because what's going to happen is that people are going to read the article and not understand it. So you want to write so that people will understand it. And you know what? One of the best ways of doing that is write your draft of your article and give it to somebody who is not in the field. And if they understand it, then your article is clear. If they understand the major points you're trying to make, then your article is ready to send to a journal. I am going to say be careful who you give that article to. It's got to be a trusted person. I had one student who gave it to one of his peers in the cohort he was studying in. That person took the article, put his name on it, and submitted it to an online journal. So it's got to be somebody who you trust and who you know is an ethical person, but let them read the article and give you feedback before you send it. Also, have a terrific abstract. Your abstract is your ad for the article. When you were studying, the first thing you did was read the abstract to decide whether or not you were going to read the whole article. So make sure your abstract tells the reader why it's important to read your article. Okay, so think, check, and then submit. So, okay, so here's the review process. This is my journal, the Organization Development Journal. It's been around for 36 years. And like I said, I have been editor off and on for 21 of those. What happens? Okay, you send the article to me. Be sure that you have followed the author's guidelines. And Dr. Pindai mentioned that. It is really important to not only follow the guidelines, but to actually read the journal to get a feel for it. Then when you send your article in, you are submitting what the editor wants. And then you write in your email, this is a terrific article and fits with your journal for these reasons. Okay. What do? I look at who you are. If you are somebody that I don't know in the field, I put it in a folder to read, and I will read every word of your article before I send it on. If you are an author I don't know, but you are writing with a co-author that I do know in the field, I will skim the article, and then if it's appropriate, I will send it to the peer review editor. Okay? If the article is not appropriate for my journal, I immediately write back and say, listen, great idea. Have you thought about sending it to a psychology journal or another journal that I know of that might make more sense? But you shouldn't be sending those articles to me. You should know my journal, or you should know the journal that you are sending to. Once I send it to the peer review editor, he immediately looks at the abstract and decides what people he's going to send it out to. And then he sends it out to reviewers who are familiar with that particular field. The reviewers then don't know anything about you, don't know anything about your experience in the field, but read your article and give you feedback on it. They send a form with their feedback back to the peer review editor, and in our journal, he then summarizes that feedback and sends it to you. Why? Because we are a double-blind peer review journal, which means that the author doesn't know who read the article and was a reviewer for the article, and the reviewers do not know who the author or authors were, so that they can judge the writing not based on the author's reputation, but based on what they see in front of them. Okay, so what are we looking for? Well, we're looking for clear, coherent writing that makes an argument as to why your topic is important. It has to have some balance with theory, and in our case, practice. So many times people will send an idea to me and I'll say, great idea, but don't forget our journal likes to see why it's useful for academics to know this information, or why it's useful for practitioners to use this information, so that we are looking for a balance between theory and practice. And also, you want to tell why this particular article is important to the field and how it moves the field on. Okay. What you get is an outright acceptance, and that's very rare, okay? If you actually get an acceptance on the first go around, you should celebrate, okay? Our journal has, I consider it a B journal, and that is because we have a 90% rejection rate and a 10% acceptance rate. Academy of Management journals have a 98% rejection rate and a 2% acceptance rate, or some of them have 95% rejection and 5% acceptance. So acceptance is a rare thing, and the importance here is being persistent. If you get conditional accept, that's another celebration. That means that the reviewers see only a few things that you have to change them quickly, and send them back. A lot of people get really frustrated when they get rewrite and resubmit, but that too is a cause for celebration, because that means the journal is interested in your article, and what they have done is given you ways to make it stronger and better. And if you are persistent, you will be accepted, but it is that persistence. If it's rejected, then normally we tell you why it was rejected, and you can choose to go to another journal. We sometimes make suggestions about other journals, but at any rate, all the rejection tells you is that you've got to rewrite. I was talking with Tojo Thakkankari, who is a well-known author in our field, last week, and he said it took him 2 years to get an article into a journal, and he tried 3 different journals. Now, Tojo has an excellent publication record. So if somebody like Tojo is having trouble with an article, there's something with the article that is not clear, he's not sending it to the right journal. Once he finally got it to the right journal, it was accepted and it was published. So you've got to remember that you must rewrite and resubmit. Don't get discouraged. Have backups to your journals. Rejection is not a rejection of the idea. It's a rejection from that particular journal. It's nothing about you. I take my rewrites and resubmits and I just get furious at it. But when I do it and I follow what the reviewers say, my article is much better. So, why should you publish? You're a person in our field and you've got something to say. You've learned something through your practice. You've learned something through teaching your students. You've learned something by your consulting, and you have an obligation to move this field forward. Questions? That's for everybody.
All right, thank you very much, Joanne. At a point in time, I got scary. I got scared because you are mentioning 95% rejection, 5% acceptance, 98%. So, wow, that is serious, Joanne. That's very serious. And it's putting some of us on our toes. And of course, letting us know that the standard is really high. I do hope some of us will be able to publish within 1 year, like Dr. Justin.
And the reason why he was because he took the information he was given and he rewrote it. And that's all it takes. So don't get scared by the rejection rates. Most people get rewrite.
And accepted. All right, thank you very much, Joanne. We'll be having our questions. I look at the chat room and I saw there is quite a lot of questions there. I think we should go to the chat room and begin to pick our questions at the end of the day. If there is another person that will still have something to ask outside that place, the person will be given the opportunity. Though our time is quite spent, we are running late. So we'll go to the chat room and we will be picking our questions. And what I think we should do is to be taking the question.
We can hear you, Maureen.
And of course, the question
Maureen,
will be.
We can't hear you.
The question would determine which presenter or which practitioner that, which scholar that will be responding to it. I have a question from Adedayo Olawi. Is Adedayo here? We are taking Adedayo's question. Adedayo Olawi, are you here? Is it possible for them to unmute Adedayo? So Adedayo asks, how do we deal with copyright issues in article publications? What are the legal restrictions writers face? That's the second question. And then the third one, he said, can we highlight legal requirements? This question, I believe, should be going to Dr. Sithole, because you discussed common challenges of publishing articles. So please, can you respond to this question? How do we deal with copyright issues in article publications? Number two question, what are the legal restrictions writers face? And then, of course, the third question, can you highlight legal requirements? Dr. Sithole.
Thank you very much. Joanne and I responded to that in the chat room earlier on, but let me just share and then Joanne will come in. We have said that once you have published an article, the copyrights remain with the journal. So even when you want to use it yourself, you have to cite the journal in which it was published. You kind of when you have your journal article published, you surrender the copyrights to the journal. And then what it also means is that you need to read the contractual issues of that particular journal, understand it, what it requires and everything, so that you will not get into the legal problems between you and the journal. Joanne, you want to add?
The only other thing I would add, if you published a table or a figure in a journal, not only do you have to, if you want to use that figure or table in another article, not only do you have to reference it, but you have to write the editor and get permission to use it. Or if you're going to, like, for example, I had an article published in English in one journal, and a German journal wanted to republish the whole thing as is, but only in German. And I had to get permission from the editor in order to do that. So you don't own that article anymore.
Oh.
Yes.
That's fantastic. So the moment your article is published, the ownership has been transferred to the publisher. That's what this question is talking about, right?
That is correct.
Yes, correct.
So thank you very much, Dr. Sithole and Joanne. Thank you for that clarification. Of course, this second question, I believe, reading the contractual issues pertaining any publication would have provided answer for that question, because Mr. Olawi was also asking the legal restrictions that writers face. I think to know the particular legal restriction a writer faces, the writer have to read the contractual content and all legal issues relating to that publication.
Yes.
I think that's what it is.
Yes.
Because
Correct.
I believe legal issues or legal attachment to a particular publication may be, it will vary based on the publication that you are approaching. I mean, the journal that you are approaching.
Yes.
So one cannot generalize and say that this is what you should be facing. So it all depends on the journal that you have approached for your publication. So, Mr. Lawi, I think you take that home. You have to be patient. You have to be meticulous in reading the contractual content and issues regarding the publisher that you meet with your articles. So his number 3 question says, can you highlight legal requirements? I think it's also saying the same thing. The legal requirement has to do with the publisher. It has to do with a particular journal, and it has to do with the kind of work that you are publishing.
Yeah.
There's another question. This is from Dr. Justin himself. He said, how do we take opportunity? It's still from, this is to Dr. Justin himself. The question is still from Mr. Lawi. How do we take opportunity of collaboration between writers and publishers? How do we take opportunity of collaboration between writers and publishers? I don't know if, Dr. Justin, do you understand this question? Or we
yes, sure. That's fine, that's fine. I have it on my screen. Collaboration is important in publications. A lot of researchers, they want to do it alone. They want to go it alone, solo. But when you collaborate with other scholars, it enhances the reliability or credibility of your article. So how do you take advantage of opportunity for collaboration? This comes with networking. On our last meeting, we had Dr. Makuku from Ghana indicating that she wants to collaborate. And immediately, yes, Dr. Chijioke indicated that we can collaborate. And this is networking. And also the same happens with publishers. How did I know of ISODC and the OD journal? It's through networking and writing to these publishers, writing to different scholars. And you need to be selective when you're selecting some of these people to collaborate with. I recently wrote an article with Kurai. She's a student of Alma, and she was doing a thesis on organizational learning. And I was writing an article on the future orientation of corporate governance. And the other student, Tsitsi, was also doing an thesis on corporate governance. And I had to engage them, Kurai and Tsitsi, to say, this is the topic that I am working on. Will you be willing to collaborate? And we developed this article together. And they brought in their different perspective on the article. And eventually the article sailed through. So networking is important in terms of publishing and ensuring that you have sound collaborations. And the second question, I'll move it to Dr. Stolle to respond to that, which is talking about Western-based data versus applying that data to the African reality, which I think is the issue of contextualization of data. Dr. Stolle and Joanne can respond to that.
Yes, let me take that just to look at the aspect that we just mentioned, contextualization. Organizational development and leadership is a contextual practice, first and foremost. Before you globalize, you have to start with localization. So this is very important that, yes, every region in this world, or every society, every community has got its own unique indigenous knowledge systems, norms, and practices that are pertinent to the situation or the environment in which those people live or operate. So we need to start from home and then integrate that knowledge system with others. In fact, the point is not to exclude other knowledge systems or other practices. The point that I'm putting across is the power of integration of knowledge systems and practices without losing the context in which that knowledge is applied. It's vitally important. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes. I think Joanne can respond to that question, Maureen. Joanne has been moving up and down the Western world and Africa. Is there any difference between data?
Well, no,
Yes.
I would say that I agree that knowledge is associated with local areas, but keep in mind that what you discover in your area may or may not be applicable to others, but are interesting to other scholars. So for example, we encourage international writers in our journal because we like to know about what Africa is doing and what works there. Does it make way?
Yeah.
Okay, but let me add to this question before Joanne goes. I'm also directing the question to Joanne. Could that be one of the criteria when someone is attempting to publish an article? Is one of the criteria, does it have to do with the contextualization? If I want to talk about, for instance, what is happening to my organization, what is happening to my own company in Nigeria, and I want to focus strictly on the industry in Nigeria, what will be my chances?
It would be very good. We publish case studies, and that's what that would be, a case study of what your organization is doing to be competitively advantaged in Nigeria. And so, yeah, that's perfectly fine to submit to the ODJ.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then I would say there's an addendum to this question. What is the cause of domesticated data scarcity in Africa? This is a very interesting question from Olawi. Of course, there is a scarcity of data. A couple of days ago, I was to do a write-up. I was to develop a concept note on some internal in-house training that my organization is running, and we are trying to find out what the unemployment rate is for youth in Nigeria within certain age range. We spent quite a lot of time trying to get something, and eventually we got that statistics from a non-Nigerian organization. So when I saw this question from Olawi, it struck me because I have experienced that, because I'm also running another research-aided organization, Network for Women and Public Policy, and sometimes you look for data in bureaus of statistics offices, you look for other, people from other research organizations, you find out that they are just not having this data. They are not having it. So what could be responsible? I want to talk about Nigeria and a few other African countries that I have worked with. Because that is also similar in some other African countries when you are running research there. So what is responsible for this scarcity of data? Is it that organizations have lost interest in investing in research? Or is it because of resources? Is it a lack of resources? Or is it, what's going on? Why that scarcity of data?
I will touch on that briefly, and then Dr. Pindai recently published an article on indigenous knowledge system, which I think is relevant to the question. Data is available in most instances, and when you're doing research from a literature review point of view, we have empirical data, we have theoretical data, and we have related literature. So we might have scarcity in terms of theoretical data where we don't have models and frameworks that are developed in the context of Africa. But we have theoretical models that have been developed in other countries. And we have to use those theoretical models And then through the scholarship of application and integration, we bring those models to home. We also have empirical literature. You might realize that there is no study that was done in Nigeria in that particular area that you want to study, but the study was done in Switzerland. So you can leverage on that empirical literature in Switzerland and then bring that literature home. If there is scarcity of data and you say there is no theoretical and there is no the empirical literature, we can get related literature. I might be studying or writing an article on organization development in banking, but I can borrow insights from health sector. I can borrow insights from the education sector, and then again contextualize that data back to the topic that I'm looking at. So we have to look at it from both theoretical, empirical, and related literature, and then it can address that issue. Yes, Doc.
All right, thank you, Dr. Justin, for that clarification. Yes, from what I took from what you've just presented, your response to this question, we can borrow insight and then contextualize it.
Correct.
To the topic that we are trying to work on. And I'm going to ask more questions on empirical literature, but let's move forward to take Adewi's final question, which says, how do we improve on data gathering and analysis for articles and publications? How do we improve on data gathering and analysis for articles and publication? I think, Dr. Justin, you should still respond to this question. It is still pointing at an area which we should be, I know it's having some level of influence on credibility, because without data, without necessary data, relevant data, it becomes very difficult to come out with a research that could be credible enough to guide publication of a particular article.
Yes, in research, we have 4 interesting paradigms or components of research paradigms, which is number 1, the ontological position, the ontology of research. We have the epistemology of research. Then we have the methods and the methodology that we are going to use. So for us to ensure that we have credible or reliable data gathering, we need to address research ontology, epistemology, the methodology, and the methods, which I think can be a discussion for the other day, in order to ensure that we have accurate data. Last presentation that was done by Alma, Dr. Stolle indicated the issue of evidence-based practice, which comes to the issue of data gathering and ensuring that we use appropriate methods and appropriate methodology to gather data in that respect.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Olawi, are you clarified? Are you satisfied? Do you still have questions? Do any other person have questions to throw in?
There's a hand up from Dr. Doughton.
Okay, all right. Can we
unmute? Okay, good evening.
Good evening, Dr.
Well, I have quite a number of questions, so I don't know. Maybe after this session, we'll go back to the floor and then drag them, because I need a lot of clarifications.
Okay,
and the reason why I have a lot of questions is, first and foremost, I want to appreciate Dr. Sorry, I want to thank you, sir. Yes, that was an expository presentation. I thank you. I want to thank Dr. Justin, as usual, for such an insightful one as well. I want to thank Dr. Joanne. You are always looking beautiful and younger. The older you get, the younger your knowledge. You are always beautiful. I love you. Thank you very much, because we need this in this our time and in this our dispensation to be well equipped and well informed as we grow on our various fields and endeavors. Now, my questions have to focus on the practice, because there will be quite a number of gaps between the practitioners and then the scholars. And one of the reasons why we are having this is that, for example, I've read quite a number of journals and articles. And sometimes when I go through these journals, I wonder what is this person talking about, because everything appears too frictional. Everything appears too unpracticable. And then to the practitioner, they wonder, because the essence of the scholar is to come up with instruments. And then the essence of the roles of the practitioner is to implement these templates or instruments. So when there are issues, we go back to the theory or to the scholar. Please, can you evaluate why is this thing not working? But when you see quite a number of articles, they are based on theories and abstracts, and they look not real, they look not implementable for the practitioners. That becomes one of the reasons why you find quite a number of practitioners disengaging and not showing interest in scholar work, because we don't see these things implementable, we don't see this thing becoming real. That is one. Secondly, the issue of language, as Dr. Pindai mentioned, is becoming paramount. Sometimes we are confused. Which is the British style, which is the American style, because take every article, you see these confusing languages. And how do we manage this? In particular, it's very common to Africa. Pick an average African articles, you will see this conflict becoming more pronounced. What do we do? The third one has to do with what Joanne mentioned. You go to LinkedIn, for example, or quite a number of social platforms, and you see endless articles, endless publications, endless writings. We are confused. Who is real and who is faking? Based on those evidences and those fundamentals that a standard literature or a standard journal should be based on: discovery, integration, application.
I think doctor's network is impairing his conversation.
Yes, Maureen, they can respond. We have, I think, 11 minutes only.
Okay. He was trying to, I think what he's talking about before the network interrupted is on language. I think he was looking for a clarification on language choice, or what should be the acceptable language. Dr. Joanne mentioned it, and I think what doctor was trying to.
Sorry.
Okay. I'm back.
Okay, so who believe that the scholars, or some scholars, allow me to use that word, have not actually read their articles and writings in such a way that becomes much more easier for the practitioner world or corporate world to implement, and therefore came up with their own ideologies and different styles of writing. Please, can you share light on these areas? Thank you.
Okay, doctor, thank you very much for that. Your question is, it will take a while for them to, because what you have just done is asking it, your question is in two, but you did ask as if to say it's one question, but there are two. So I would like first and foremost, Dr. Joanne, to respond to that area, this last second part of Dr. Jegede's question on language. What Dr. Jegede is talking about is a reality, and it's really problematic. It's not even only in publication of articles. Even when we are writing international exams here, we are met with demands of writing in certain way. And for us back here in Nigeria, for instance, we were colonized by the British. And then we have British version of English, we have American version of English. Here, British version is very, very highly acceptable, and that is what even the standard say. So, but in publication now, what we are trying to say is, how do we now marry this language, but it will not become a kind of a debilitating factor? So what do you have to say to us on that? What kind of English? What does your language? What are the language specifics that publishers or intending publishers should note, before bringing forward their articles to your journal for publication?
Well, I didn't get that from his questions, but answering your question is your journal's going to tell you what language to use. You read the journal and you get a feel for the style. What I got more, and this is what I'm going to say to you, my philosophy of doing research is develop theory from practice. All of my writing started with practice, and I developed my theoretical knowledge from actual use of various tools in making change. And so my philosophy is not one of scholar versus practice. I am a scholar practitioner, and my journal is a scholar practitioner. So that's the other answer to the question, and I don't know if that was it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joanne. I just picked this particular statement of yours, developing theory from practice. I do not think that is what most scholars does, and that is what Mr. Dotto is, Dr. Dotto is trying to emphasize on. A lot of scholars develop theories and they walk into our offices to begin to have discussions with us.
Yeah, and I don't like those people. I'm sorry. I don't think they develop things that are helpful or useful, but that's my philosophy of doing research. So,
but from my own perspective, that should be the best philosophy, and that is what all of us, that are trying to develop a career along this path should be imbibing in, because it will, if it doesn't reduce that gap, if it doesn't reduce it, it will, it can eliminate that gap. Because when you develop theory from practice,
that transition of being one collective together, and support like that, it is
someone should mute Olawi, please. Okay, all right. So what I was saying is developing a theory from practice is much more better than developing a theory in abstraction and then walking to people that are practicing. One of the questions I wanted to ask is, just like Dr. Justin mentioned, I see a lot of people who would say, oh, Mrs. Omeibe, I wrote a book. I wrote a book in family business. I wrote a book in entrepreneurship. I need you, to proofread. Someone had approached me before and said I should proofread what he has put down. I should make a comment, and the book is already completed. In fact, the information is that the manuscript had already been sent. And I asked her, but you knew this is where I operate in. My expectation would have been for me to have this conversation with you while the book is being written. For instance, you would have asked me, what is happening in motorcycle manufacturing in Nigeria now? How is your process? Is there anything new? Because he was trying to write books on why manufacturing aren't doing very well and why they are still having a very meager contribution to the country's GDP. And he has written the book, and I just had to, and I told her it's not going to be possible, except you would come into my company, I will move you around the factory, I will show you certain things, I will tell you, we will sit down and then we'll talk about all the factors, and then you understand it, and then you
hello.
So I think developing theory from practice, especially when we are talking about organizational development, it will give us, more, to benefit from.
Hello.
So,
yes, Maureen, I think for the sake of time, you have Dr. Chijioke, Dr. Chichetu, and we have two book authors who are here. There's Emmanuel from Botswana and Mr. Vere. I think you can close with those four, yeah, unless there's anyone else.
First of all, Dr. Chijioke, you're the editor, is our editorial chairperson, right?
Yeah.
So I want to make some chip into one or two things.
Okay.
Yeah, research is not cast on stone. It's not a rigid or one-way thing. It allows for a lot of flexibility. It allows for thinking and conceptualization and operationalizing variables. It's not just straight jacket. And there are two approaches to research. Most researchers adopt one or the mix of the approaches. It's either you are testing theories or you are developing theories. And also, when you talk about when you're testing theory, when you talk about practice, when you talk about trying to develop from practice to theory, like what you just mentioned, then you are going to do an in-depth analysis. You are going to do some observation. You are going to use some maybe interviewing of people, and it lies within the qualitative approach of research. That you are trying to develop from practice. You're trying to develop theory. But when you are testing, there's already existing theory. You want to know what is happening in the organization and the implications of what is happening and how your work, the research you are doing, is going to impact on the organization. So it's another approach. So another thing I want to say is there is no confusion as per the language. There's what we call academic writing. In research, the language is different. You don't speak English, you don't speak grammar, you don't just write or you have to keep it simple so that the ordinary person will understand the message you are trying to pass across.
Yes.
So that is my point for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Chijioke, and let me especially welcome you. I didn't get to know where you joined, and I've not met you for the first time. Welcome to the conversation room, and thank you for that strong input. Dr. Chijioke was trying to say that there are two ways or approaches to research, and of course, she also emphasized on the flexibility, the need for research process to be flexible. He talked about testing theory or developing theory. So it all depends on what you are trying to achieve researching with your research. Then I would like to add, Dr. Chijioke, that yes, it's not just in research. Anything that has to do with knowledge transfer, there is need for people to be concise in language. There is need for people to be very, very clear. In the English, the language will just be very, very simple because you are trying to impart knowledge. You are trying to speak to an audience. What you are writing and whatever work you are doing as a researcher is not for you. It's for consumption of a third party. And the understanding that a third party may not be someone that is in your field or someone that have the same intellectual capacity or the same confluence of knowledge you already have in that field. That should be able to direct any knowledge transfer specialist or expert that when you are conducting a research, when you are trying to write an article or when you are trying to send information that is intended to impart knowledge, precision, clarity, and simplicity. There are three key things that we must observe. So thank you very much, Dr. Chijioke. Doctor, did we satisfy you? Or you still have some questions?
I'm fine. I'm fine. That's commendable. That's commendable. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You have a hand up from Dr. Chijioke.
Yeah, thank you very much. So what we are going to do now is just let me also throw in the few questions I have, and then we will proceed to the next thing, which is our closing remark. That is in the absence of any other question. So what I want to ask is...
Hi, Maureen. Hi,
yes.
Maureen. Yes,
Yes.
I still have a question. I have my hand up.
Beautiful. So let's hear you.
Yes, it's a comment and a question. Going back to some of the comments by the members before on the need for contextual relevance for articles for them to be able to impact industry and as a way of bridging that gap between practice and theory. I think from observation, one of the challenges that I think has led to that is the reality that for most of some of our academics, the target journals for publication are outside their context. Like from looking at Africa. So when I think of publishing an article, I go for journals that are outside my context. So just by that itself, even as I'm writing, even as I'm doing my research, the thinking is that I would want to satisfy, the specifications and the requirements of the journal, which is outside my immediate context. So my question is, how then can we develop credibility for our own local journals to the extent that our leading academics, our leading practitioners, they actually take pride in publishing in those journals, so that even as they are writing, even as they are doing their research, ultimately leading to publication, it's informed by their immediate context, and they can speak directly to industry, they can speak directly to organizations within their immediate context. Whereas you find for most of our organizations as well, they then tend to go for, just as an example, the Harvard Business Review, for the latest organizational leadership and development insights, as opposed to going to a locally developed journal for insights with regards to organizational leadership and development. So how can we bridge that? How can we develop our local journals to that level where industry itself is confident of what our journals would be carrying? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a response to that. One of the things that we do in the ODJ is have special issues. And I invite certain authors to write about a particular topic for that special issue. And those of you who are journal editors of a local journal in your country or in your part of Africa could do that. You could invite very strong scholars who don't normally write for your journal to write on a special topic for a special issue that you are putting out. That way you get them to think about the issue that you want for your particular journal.
All right, thank you, Joanne. I wanted Dr. Sidwali to respond also to this question, because he took us through common challenges that publishers face. What Dr. Chichetu have just expressed now is the truth. Because even on my desk, as I'm sitting in my office now, all the materials I have here, books, journals, and of course the ones I stored in my archive, I cannot think of any material that come, apart from a few books I have from Dr. Jegede. I cannot account for, let me say, more than 3 books in my library that is authored by a Nigerian. But before I go to Dr. Sito, I would like to say something. There is this unreal perception about these big schools. And I can authoritatively say that it may not be helping maybe upcoming scholars. We need to find out why there is preference for publications, articles, and the reviewed materials from Harvard, from Oxford, from other schools. Because to the best of my own understanding, my background in business, for instance, in Nigeria, I have not been able to get anything from those kind of materials that had directly impacted my knowledge on how to run my affairs in the gap groups. So I would say, Dr. Sito, can you elaborate? Is it that we do not have quite a number of authors, local authors, that is, or indigenous authors, writing on this, for instance, organizational development, leadership and development? Is it that we do not have quite a number of them, or is it that we are just like accustomed, organization and organizational leaders are accustomed to searching foreign materials? Because I am an advocate of customization in trying to solve problems. Hence, the essence of publication and the essence of authoring books is to solve targeted or specific questions or questions or problems. Do we think it is going to be very helpful to us to continue to focus on foreign materials, or we should also, as part of our advocacy in this organization, or as part of our campaign in this organization, is it important we begin also to emphasize to publishers, to scholars, to practitioners, to begin to patronize materials that is indigenous, that is customized for our own specific challenges? So over to you, Dr. Sito.
Right, thank you, Maureen. I think the first thing I want to share about this topic is that it is vitally important for us here in Africa to believe in ourselves, to believe in our own knowledge systems. If in the absence of self-belief, we will continue to believe that external knowledge systems are better than our own knowledge systems. And so that is the issue at hand. So as we are discussing here and we are writers, let's take writing as an advocate's work. It's not something that we do when we are relaxed. It is something we do to move mountains. So we are advocates, kind of, work that we are doing as we write. So we need to advocate to believe in ourselves. The other thing that I want to add is that we need to influence academia to, let me say, writing is also associated with economics, like what Dr. Justin said earlier on. So if I write a book, I would like, if we are serious about ourselves, then the university next door should be able to look at my book and say, you know what, we need to include this book as part of our curriculum. As long as our writing do not get into the hands of the academia, then my first point would continue to say we would not believe in ourselves, because no one is taking serious of what we write. So the academia is a one partner that we should actually work with and influence to really use our work. Then lastly, in our journals and our publishing houses in Africa, we also need to ensure that quality is maintained. So we need to ensure quality. With our editorial teams, we need to make sure that they are competent so that
I think the network is impairing Dr. Sito's response. Okay, we will continue while we wait for him to come back. But I've picked something from what he said. He's talking about our people also believing.
Hello?
Are you back?
Hello?
Dr. Sule, are you back?
No. Hello? I have something to say, please.
Okay, Dr. Jegede, over to you, yes?
I think
we can hear you.
One of the things that should also be mentioned, which I also agree with Professor Chijioke, is the fact that sometimes some of these writings do not apply or are not practicable, as I said earlier. And when practitioners don't see that these are realistic, because, for example, let's look at the role of this network. The role of this network is to advance both scholars and practitioners' endeavors. It is not solely for practitioners. It's not solely for the scholars. It's for both. So when scholars come up with articles, with writings, and the corporate organization, for example, don't see how they can implement it because they are too abstract, as I said, nothing happens. Back again to what Dr. Chijioke said and what Joanne said. If you don't write, if you don't have the industry inputs in your writing, then it will not be appreciated and not considered for adoption. One of the reasons why you mentioned why Harvard and others are being adopted is because they have business schools. How many business schools do we have in Africa? Because the role of business school is to bridge the gap. But if these gaps are not bridged, then corporate bodies will keep on focusing more on the Western business school for data, for statistics, and for reliable information that will help to enhance corporate organizations' practices. That's what I was thinking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chijioke, for that.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Chijioke, you want to say something?
Yeah. The issue we have in Africa is not that practitioners, or it's not that academics does not want to marry or collaborate with the industry, but we have the challenge that most people in the industry, they are not interested in research. They are not interested in even implementing what the scholars have found out from their studies. For example, for me, if someone says there's no, that what scholars are writing is not connected or is disconnected from practice, I would not agree with such assertion, because at the end of the day, when you publish, when you write articles that pass through rigorous peer review, that eventually get published in very good journals, then in your paper, in your research or whatever, your paper must clearly state what you want to add. What is the current state of research in that field? That is, what have people done? And what is yet to be done, and which gap you want to fill. And at the end of the day, you must also tell us the managerial implications of your research. And the managerial implication of your research is supposed to be linked to practice, to the industry. So the people in the industry are supposed to read these articles, these research findings, and try to apply them. But if I ask, how many captain of industries in Nigeria, let me not say Africa, in Nigeria, read journals? Even the people in the universities, the lecturers and professors, they don't even have access to high impact journals. That's why publishing in Africa, except for South Africa that have some very good journals, in Nigeria, you don't have journals because, one, to get to be able to develop a quality journal, it must pass through a process. It must pass through a process. And also, it involves huge investment. Research involves investment. How much is the government putting in? How much is industry? We talk about industry. How much, if you go to Harvard, most of the research that are done in those schools are funded by by the industry. Even not just Harvard, in developed worlds, in Europe, organizations found they provide money for research, but how many African companies are doing that? So for me, I don't think the scholars are not willing to cooperate or collaborate with industry, but the industry, for me, they are not even willing to make use of what is available to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Maureen, I'll just hold you there. Dr. Joanne has a meeting to attend in the next 13 minutes. So we'll ask Dr. Joanne to just give her closing remarks, then she can leave as we wrap it up.
Oh, that's okay, that's okay.
Okay.
All I want to say is I have enjoyed this, and I like hearing from all of you. And I do hope that you will take on the opportunity to write for the Organization Development Journal. I look forward to having conversations with you in the future. And thank you so much for your kind invitation.
Thank you, Dr. Joanne. I am going to be reaching out to you as soon as possible, and then we'll take it from there. I think I have a lot to learn from you, and I look forward to quite a wonderful experience with you. Thank you very much for the insightful contribution and for all that you shared today. They are quite beneficial. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Dr. Chijioke, for your perspective. I am an industry practitioner, and I'll say this. All the factors, all the things that you have just mentioned that is attached to the developmental level of nations, it is a general phenomenon. The organization you are mentioning, you should also be able to look into those organizations and see the type of struggle that they are facing. As big as most of all these organizations look, as big as, for instance, the gap groups may look, there is a lot of struggles emanating from the harsh environment of running businesses. And what my company do receive year in, year out are letters from people. The kind of letter we receive from public or from the universities is just like if they are having a program and they want us to be in attendance, or if they are having a public lecture, they want us to be present to send our staffs. I've been in this industry for about, let me say 12 years now. And I'm not just a member of the gap groups. I also play a major role in the association that pilots affairs of this sector. So what I'm talking about is not just my view. So it is the view of a lot of industry players. We don't always get to see these letters, people, scholars inviting industrialists or industries that they have this proposal, they have this plan of what they want to research about. The point is, before you approach any industry to sponsor a research work, you are going to do so well to convince that industrialist or that business leader that the work you are going to do is highly valuable. And you are going to be able to define how the work you are going to do is going to impact on the growth of the company. Because the bottom line for businesses, the bottom line for organizations, it is always survival and sustainability. So I don't get to say this. I think I would like to agree to some extent with Dr. Jegede. There is a disconnect between what is being produced by scholars and what is actually needed by organizations. If I go to a bookshelf and I see a book, the first book I bought in my company 6 years ago, it's a friend's gift. I have gone to bookshops to search for books to buy, to read. Because in my industry, it's an industry that is highly isolated until recently, when the organization began to work very hard for the federal government to integrate the sector into the industry where they belong and begin to take recognition of the activities and the input of this sector in the Nigerian economy. So what I'm saying is there is a disconnect, and I think it's our responsibility now in this forum to begin to look at how to connect these two people. We are scholar practitioners. So it is now, let us take it an obligation, because this is a solution forum. This is a solution hunting forum. We should now take it upon ourselves to look into this, because it's a problem. It's a problem. Yes. We have to find out why is there disconnect. And then we also have to tell us, we also have to tell ourselves, the publishers, those that are authoring books, when you author your books, you go out to sell them to people who need them. Even in Nigeria of today, we don't have a very stringent, programmed distribution channel of books. You just have to walk into a bookshop and begin to look, or you go online to search for books. So we have to look into all of that to address it, because as long as that disconnection exists, we may not be able to get it right. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We have two authors. I think we have exceeded time with almost an hour, but we have two authors. I see Mr. Vere's hand is up, and Mr. Emmanuel. I don't know if we have anyone else who has a contribution to make, probably in the next 7 minutes, so that we close in the next 7 minutes.
Yes, because we just have that 7 minutes.
Yes. So you have Mr. Vere and Mr. Emmanuel, and if anyone else has a contribution, so we close in 7 minutes. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Justin and Maureen, for chairing this meeting. Indeed, what Dr. Jegede said and what Maureen is testifying, there seems to be a disconnect between what academics and researchers put on board or on the table and the reality that's obtaining in the market or in the industries. But coming to aspects of books, I've told people that it's books and books that speaks of the baboon and the hare tails. Yes, indeed, they can appeal to schools, primary schools, etc. But in order to solve socio-economic challenges and bring economic transformation, we need to be speaking to factual and real socio-economic challenges. Books should be developing minds and transforming them. I'm just referring to one of the books that my first book, Becoming a Person of Impact. It really speaks into issues that when one stands by, they are really transformed. And we should not be just selling books for the sake of money, but as a person, you should be authoring books that has grit in it, that transforms mind and societies. So from our side as authors, we should be authoring sense, authoring logic, and authoring practical issues that when one applies in their lives, they are transformed. I was asked by this other person, I sold my books to the whole set of vehicle investigation department officers, and the head of that department read my book twice. He was saying, I'm reading your book for the second time. You should have authored this book 12 years ago. I could have been a different person altogether. So my message to book writing and even research, we need to research that will then assist in the economic transformation agenda that we all seek to have. Thank you so much for this, for the opportunity to speak. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you, Kudzanai. Thank you very much for that input. Of course, I'm going to go and search for that, your book. I must read it, especially the one that has to do with impact. I'm going to read it. Thank you very much. Do we still have another person who wanted to ask questions, we just have 2 minutes before we round up this conversation.
Emmanuel from Botswana. Emmanuel.
Okay, Mr. Emmanuel from Botswana, please, can we hear you?
Good evening, my fellow leaders in here. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right, great. Thank you so much. And sometimes it's really hard for me to be the last person to speak after so much information from the presenters and everyone who participated in today's session. Let me say thank you so much, all the presenters who presented in today's session. That was very insightful and yet igniting and yet purposeful for today's economic environment, for today's challenge that we face today. I come from the writing background, and I would say today's presentation, it was more like it was structured for me. It was structured mostly for us as people like who want to add impact to other people. And I like the words of Dr. Siton, who's when he said, we need to advocate for whatever we are doing. You don't have to write, but we have to advocate for our work. And I like to add on to it to say, leaders today, the world is in need of information. The world is hungry for more information. And then we can only do this when we research, when we put research as part and parcel of our organizations, not only our organizations also, but to us as individuals, because the information that we have today, it might be applied today, but it doesn't mean it can apply and in 10 years to come. Hence, we need to improve or keep research as part and parcel of us. So research has to be part and parcel of every organization or every individual who needs to add impact to us. I like from what I got from this presentation today is to say, whatever we do as individuals or as organizations, as leaders, we need to strive for value, which was mostly justified by Dr. Justin, who said, whatever we do, we don't have to do it for the sake of doing it. Let there be value, because where there's value, people buy, and then there's transformation. And then he talked about 3 key issues where there's value. There is economic value, but I like to say economic value can only be achieved where there is human capacity development. When we develop individuals, these individuals can now be in a position to think economic problems and challenges that we face and then address those issues. We cannot only think of economic transformation when we as individuals, we are not transformed. Hence, transformation has to be part of everything that we do. And then the societies that we live in has to be transformed. How do we make sure this societies transform? There has to be an element of research. What works today doesn't mean it works for us tomorrow. Hence the need for us to keep on improving where we are, keep on improving where we are. And then it's something that was said by, that I always say to people that, you know, the proof of us as leaders is for us to, it's our ability to produce measurable results.
Mr. Manuel, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. I think
okay.
I'm there. Yes, I was saying this to say, the proof to us as leaders is our ability to produce measurable results. What are we doing? Is it measurable? Is it quantifiable? Can we put in there and say, we were here today, this is where we are today. But all the things, they cannot be achieved in a vacuum. There has to be an element of research. There has to be an element of continuous development, which is why we are here today. We need to address issues that we face with a continuous development mindset. And that is my view from today's presentation. And I like to say, let's strive to empower, let's strive to motivate and lead. Because if we have these 3 cores into our lives, then our societies can transform. And then we can transform our countries and all over the world. We are the light in everything that we do. Thank you so much for this.
Wow, thank you very much, Mr. Manuel. Though the network was impairing your remarks, I still got some things out of what you have presented. Thank you very much. At this point in time, I would like Mr. Justin to just give a final remark before we do our closing prayer. I want us to know something. In total, if there is something I would like all of us to go home with in today's class, is that the essence of this seminar this evening is to restore the dignity of creation of truth. So how do we restore the dignity of creation of truth as scholar practitioners? A question for us to take home. We should provide that answer to ourselves as we carry on as organizational development and leadership practitioners. So please, Mr. Justin, I would like you to, Dr. Justin, round up so that Mr. Chunju, if he is present in this room, should take our closing prayers, our closing remarks.
Because of time, I just want to appreciate everyone for such an engaging conversation. We had scheduled it for 1 hour, 30 minutes, but it actually took us 2 hours, 30 minutes, which indicates the extent of engagement and the importance of this conversation. I must appreciate everyone and Alma as well for collaborating with us together with the International Society for Organization Development and Change. This is all I can say for now. And I think Dr. Chichetu will coordinate, who will give us the closing remarks from that end.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Justin, and thank you for championing all of this. We are all growing by the day, courtesy of all the activities that has been ongoing here since we all gathered together as a network. Thank you very much. Dr. Chichetu, can you give us a very brief closing remark, just a minute?
Sure, thank you. I think I'll just like what Dr. Justin has said, we want to reiterate our appreciation to everyone who participated in today's session. I think the engagement was quite insightful. We acknowledge the insights of Dr. Joanne, Dr. Justin, Dr. Pindai, and we are looking forward to the next session.
All right, thank you very much. And I would like to just briefly introduce, she has just left, my younger sister who I invited into this meeting. She's a medical practitioner. She's a health care practitioner. I asked her to come because she's nursing an intention of writing a book in mental health. And I told her that this platform, this meeting we are having this afternoon is going to be very good for you. And she's here. She's Mrs. Amaka Amoke. She's the one that just joined us like 35 minutes ago. So Mrs. Amoke, I welcome you to the meeting. You joined a little bit late, but no problem. You must have gotten one or two things from the people that were speaking when you joined. And I promise I'm going to release the records of this conversation to you so that you can learn more and prepare very well, to take the very first bold step in writing your books. And of course, I will also connect you to Dr. Joanne, who will be leading you through the publication. So you're welcome, and thank you for making it to this conversation. You have something to say? Say hello to everybody as we are closing. Somebody should unmute Mrs. Amoke, please. Unmute Mrs. Amoke, please.
I will do that.
All right.
Yes.
To be part of this platform this evening. I'm really happy to be here. At least I've learned